The walls in Bay 3 don't echo like the others. They don't ring with the chaos of screaming families or the static crackle of trauma pages. They absorb sound instead, like a lung that only takes in silence. If you stand there long enough, especially past midnight, you'll start to notice it. Not the quiet, the rhythm beneath it. My name is Derek. I'm 29, a trauma nurse, and I've been working the graveyard shift in the ER for 3 years. Nights are different than days. Everything's slower, quieter, but not less dangerous. You just hear things more, think more. I've always kept to myself. I've learned it's safer that way, emotionally at least. But over the past few months, something has been keeping me in Bay 3 longer than I need to be. Something subtle, a pulse. It started small. I'd be cleaning up after a code, resetting lines and changing sheets, and I'd feel it. A low vibration like the hum of a deep subwoofer, but softer, rhythmic, steady, like a heartbeat. I checked the machines. Nothing running. The monitor would be off, the EKG leads hanging, but the sensation would still be there, under my feet, in my palms as they pressed down on the mattress. At first, I thought it was psychosomatic. Maybe some part of me had internalized the trauma. A muscle memory thing. You do enough compressions, shock, enough flat lines, and your body keeps expecting more. So I ignored it. But then I started hearing it. Not loud, not even really sound. Just a pulse, a steady echoing beat, like a second heartbeat in the room, not coming from me or the patient. Sometimes it was too fast, sometimes too slow, always too close. One night, a kid came in, drug overdose, 18. His heart gave out twice on the table before we got him back. He woke up screaming, eyes wide like he'd seen something no one should. After he stabilized, I went to Bay 3 to restock the crash cart, and I heard it again, stronger this time. The pulse, just beneath the floor. My ears buzzed with it. I crouched down, pressed my hand to the tile. Nothing, but the monitor lit up. No patient attached, no power to the pads, but a waveform danced across the screen, perfect sinus rhythm. I unplugged the monitor. The waveform stayed. My chest got tight, the kind of tight that makes your breath feel shallow. I backed out of the room and didn't return for an hour. It became a pattern. The pulse came and went, but it was always stronger after a code. I started asking quiet questions. Old nurses, the ones close to retirement, avoid Bay 3. One of them, Doris, looked me dead in the eye and said, "That room doesn't forget." I asked what she meant, but she walked away, mumbling something about the boy in the green hoodie. I looked through our incident logs, found an entry from 5 years ago. A John Doe, mid-teens, no ID, crushed in a rollover, died in Bay 3. No one ever claimed the body. They kept him in the morgue for a week before the county took over. After that, I couldn't ignore it anymore. One particularly dead night, around 3:45 a.m., I went into Bay 3 and turned off the lights, just sat on the stool beside the bed, waited. 15 minutes passed, then the monitor clicked on. I swear to God, I had unplugged it earlier. The waveform returned, strong, rhythmic. I leaned in, unsure if it was some cruel fault in the wiring, some feedback loop, but then I felt it again, that pulse, not just in the room, not just in the monitor, in me. My own heartbeat was sinking to it, slowing, matching, mimicking. The room felt heavier, the air denser, and then the bed creaked. I turned. The sheet had risen slightly, like someone was breathing beneath it, but there was no one there. I didn't scream. I should have, but something held me still, like if I moved, it would see me, like it didn't know I was watching yet. Then the lights flickered, the waveform spiked, surged, flatlined. One long, unwavering tone filled the room, and then it was gone. Silence. The monitor shut off. The bed sagged. I stood up on shaking legs, walked out without touching anything, didn't file a report. I started asking questions again, quietly, carefully. There'd been whispers, old rumors among residents. Bay 3 is sticky, one said. Trauma gets stuck there. Another told me that once during training, she saw an intern freeze during a code, said he heard the patient's heart keep beating, even after they called time of death. I think I understand now. I think that room is an echo chamber for loss. Some deaths don't end cleanly. Some hearts don't just stop. They leave a residue, a memory of rhythm, Bay 3 remembers the moment the heart gives out, and it plays it again, over and over. I used to be afraid of it. I'm still afraid, if I'm honest, but I also feel drawn to it. On nights when things get too loud in my head, when the trauma piles up and I need to feel something that makes sense, I go there, I sit, I wait. Sometimes I hear it, sometimes I don't, but when I do, I feel less alone. I think some part of that boy, the one no one claimed, is still waiting. Maybe for someone to say his name, maybe just for someone to notice. I can't fix it. I don't pretend to understand it, but I can sit with it. I can keep him company. And maybe that's all any of us want in the end. Not to be saved, just not to be alone. Some hearts don't stop when we say they do. Some just keep going. The hallway outside Trauma Room 2 never seems to warm. It's not the temperature. I've checked the thermostat a dozen times, but a kind of chill that sinks into your sleeves, crawls beneath your collar, a forgotten draft that never moves the curtains, never lifts a single sheet. It just lingers, still and unseen, like the things no one says during handoff. I've wheeled bodies through that hallway at every hour, but it always feels the same, like walking through someone else's memory. My name is Anna. I'm 34. I'm a trauma nurse in a level 1 emergency department. I've worked here almost 8 years. My hands know what they're doing before my mind catches up. That's how it has to be. You don't get to flinch. Not here. Not when a patient is coding. Not when a kid comes in with half their face gone. You move. You act. Then you forget. Or you try to. There's one memory I haven't been able to forget. It's tied to that hallway. Not to a room, or a name, or even a death. Just a gurney. One that rolls itself in when no one's looking. I first noticed it a few months ago, during an especially brutal double shift. A 12-year-old came in with blunt trauma. Car accident, ejected through the windshield. We lost him. Everyone did their jobs like they always do. Controlled chaos, blood pressure dropping, chest compressions, push epi, push again, time of death, move on. I stepped out for air, walked past Trauma 2, and there it was, a gurney, pushed up against the wall across from the room, sheet half draped, the wheels slightly turned, like it had rolled itself there, and stopped too fast. I didn't think much of it. Things get left all the time during codes, so I rolled it to supply, parked it, forgot it, or tried to. Next night it was there again, same spot, same angle, only this time the sheet was folded differently, creased neatly at the corners, the way we do after a transport. I asked around. No one had left it there. No transport logged. No one had touched that hallway that night. Not since we had cleaned up after the kid. A few nights later, I saw it move. It was around 4 a.m., one of those slow crawls of time where everyone's too tired to talk and too awake to sleep. I was filling out charting near the nursing station when I caught it in the corner of my eye. Just a small motion. I turned my head. The gurney. It had shifted 6 feet across the hall. No sound. No one near it. I walked to it slowly, heart thudding in my chest like a warning. I placed my hand on the railing. It was warm, like someone had just gotten up from it, but the sheet was smooth, unwrinkled. I told myself it had to be a prank, maintenance maybe, or someone messing with me, but the nights kept stacking up, and the gurney kept returning. Never during the day, never when others were watching, only when I was alone, or nearly alone. Sometimes I'd come around the corner and see it facing the wrong direction. Sometimes it was already there when I arrived. I started dreaming about it. The gurney rolling down the hallway on its own, the sound of wheels that never squeaked. Sometimes I'd wake with my hands gripping imaginary rails, my breath quick and shallow like I'd been running. There was one night I won't forget. A code came in, gunshot to the chest, early 20s. He bled out on the table. We tried. God, we tried. After they called time of death, I stayed behind to clean up. Everyone else had gone to grab coffee or take a breath. I wheeled the body out myself, but when I got to the hallway, the gurney was already there, empty, waiting. It hadn't been there when we started. I know that. I stared at it, just stared, and then the lights flickered, only in that stretch of hallway, nowhere else. And I heard something, just under my breath. like someone breathing, but out of sync with me, a heartbeat that didn't belong to anyone in the room. I turned back toward the trauma room. For a split second, only a flash, I saw a figure standing in the far corner, thin, barefoot, wearing hospital linens. I blinked. Gone. The air was cold, the kind of cold that makes your jaw lock and your throat dry out. I moved the body onto the other gurney, the one that had appeared. The wheels rolled smoother than they should have, almost like the gurney was guiding me. I took the body to the cooler. When I came back, it was gone. The gurney had vanished. No one had touched it. I checked the cameras. There was a 10-minute gap, just static. That's not how our system works. I stopped asking questions after that, but I started watching more carefully. I've seen it 3 more times since then, always after a death, always near trauma room too. Some of the new nurses don't believe me. They joke about it. One even tried to lie on the gurney, see if the ghost would come. He got dizzy and passed out. No medical explanation, no pre-existing condition. But when we pulled him up, his pulse was out of sync, like his body had been mimicking another rhythm, a different heartbeat. I've started talking to it, quietly. When I pass by the hallway and see the gurney, I just nod and say, "I see you." I don't know if it helps, but I think whatever it is, it doesn't want to be forgotten. It wants to be seen, acknowledged. I think it might be carrying something no one else will. Grief that never left the room, a memory that never had a name. Maybe it waits there for the ones who died too fast, the ones no one claimed, the ones we push away in our heads just to make it through another shift. Maybe it's not haunted by ghosts. Maybe it's haunted by what we leave behind. The gurney is back tonight. I passed it an hour ago, still empty, still waiting, and I swear, for a moment, I felt it watching me, like it was hoping I'd remember someone, or maybe hoping someone would remember me. The curtains in bed 6 don't quite meet. There's always a small gap, less than an inch, where the 2 panels hang just shy of touching. No matter how carefully you draw them, that space remains. It doesn't seem like much until you're sitting across the room, watching it at 2 a.m., and realizing the gap doesn't stay still. It breathes. It widens and narrows like something on the other side is waiting to see if you'll look back. My name is Lewis. I'm a 38-year-old patient care technician. I do the grunt work, bed changes, transport, vitals, cleaning up the things no one else wants to touch. I work nights, mostly in the trauma overflow unit. It's quieter there, less chatter, more space to think, maybe too much. I started noticing the curtain thing about 4 months ago. Bed 6 was empty, freshly cleaned, the mattress covered in crisp white linens. I'd just finished replacing the sharps container when I caught it, that subtle movement in the curtain gap. I figured it was the air vent above, but when I looked up, the ceiling vent was closed, not even a breeze. Still, I dismissed it. I've seen worse. I've smelled worse. You develop a tolerance for weirdness in this job, but then it happened again, and again. Each time, the room was empty. Each time, the gap moved, just slightly, like someone adjusting their view. One night, I decided to test it. I sat down in the chair across from the bed, clipboard in hand, pretending to do charting. I kept my eyes on that space between the curtains. For 20 minutes, nothing. Then the room got colder. I could feel it against my forearms, even through my scrubs. Not like AC cold, the kind of cold that makes your knuckles ache. And then I saw it. A hand, just the fingers, pale, curled slightly inward, resting on the mattress, visible through the gap for less than a second before disappearing as the curtain moved back into place. I stood up so fast my knee knocked the metal tray behind me. No one came running. It was a slow night, the kind of night where no one questions a noise unless there's blood. I walked to the bed, pulled the curtain fully open. Nothing, but the sheet had an impression, a faint dip in the center, as if someone had just been sitting there. I left the room and didn't go back until sunrise. I didn't tell anyone. You learn not to, unless you want your name passed around in a smirk. But I started avoiding bed 6, traded assignments when I could. Still, it kept happening, always the same pattern. Room prepped, curtains drawn, Gap breathing, hand appearing. It wasn't just the hand either. Sometimes, when I walked by quickly, I'd hear something. A whisper, 2 syllables, maybe 3, soft, mournful, not in English, just sound, grieving sound. One night, the charge nurse assigned a new admit to bed 6, a middle-aged man, post-stroke, aphasic, no speech, limited movement. I helped settle him in. As I tucked the blanket under his legs, he turned his head and looked straight at me. His eyes were wide, wet, unfocused. Then he whispered, "Don't let it close." I froze. He hadn't spoken a word since arriving. No vocalization, nothing. "Don't let what close?" I asked, but he just stared at the curtain gap. I stepped back, heart racing. Later that night, I walked past and saw the curtain pulled tightly shut, no gap. I reached out and, without knowing why, gently pulled the panels apart until the gap was back. I shouldn't have done that, because that was the night I saw the face. It hovered just behind the gap, colorless, gaunt. The eyes were open too wide, and they weren't looking at me. They were looking through me. Not angry, not even sad, just empty. It blinked once, then faded back into the darkness between the curtains. The monitor in the room flatlined. The man in bed 6 died. No alarms, no warning, just silence. I think the gap is a door, not to the other side. Not death, not heaven, not anything religious. Something smaller, colder. A place where people go when they're forgotten mid-thought, when they die confused, or lonely, or too fast. I started asking quiet questions. Staff older than me remembered similar things. "That room's always had curtain trouble," one said. Another recalled a psych patient from 10 years ago who kept hiding in there, claiming someone behind the curtain won't stop watching. I stopped sleeping well. Sometimes I dream of standing in the room, surrounded by curtains that stretched too high, too long, too thick to be fabric. The gaps between them multiplied, all of them breathing, all of them watching. One shift, I came in to find a body under a sheet in bed 6. No one told me we'd had a death. I checked the chart, no patient listed. I lifted the sheet, there was nothing underneath, not even a mattress, just the shape of a person pressed into the plastic frame. The indent faded as I stared. Later, I asked the cleaning crew if they'd left anything. They hadn't touched that room all night. I've started carrying safety pins. When I clean bed 6 now, I pin the curtain panel shut. Just a tiny metal clasp at the bottom, near the rail. It doesn't stop the gap from trying to open, but it slows it down. One night, I forgot. I turned around to grab a fresh gown and felt a gust, sharp and sudden, brush the back of my neck. I turned, curtains parted, the gap wide, wider than it ever had been. And I swear, I saw a dozen hands, small and long-fingered, retract into the shadows just as the fabric stilled. I didn't scream, but I haven't gone back in since. Other staff have noticed now. Not the face, not the whispers, not even the hands, but the feeling, the way the room cools too quickly, the way the curtains move, even when the air's still, the way some patients stare at the gap like it owes them an answer, or maybe a name. Last week, they started renovations. They planned to knock out the wall between bed 6 and 7, open up the space. The project manager asked if I had any concerns. I said no, but I keep wondering, if you widen the gap enough, does something come through, or do we just make it easier for something already here to step out? There are 2 safety pins on the curtain tonight. I'm not on duty, but I still came in, just to check, just to keep the gap from closing completely, or opening too far, because I've started to understand some people aren't gone, they're just waiting on the other side of the curtain line. There's a kind of silence that only happens right after a crash code. It isn't relief, it's the echo of something unfinished. The air still tastes like adrenaline, the machines still hum, but there's a void in the middle of the room, like the absence of breath is heavier than the breath itself. In Trauma Bay 4, that silence always settles differently, thicker, closer. The curtain doesn't just divide the room, it feels like a threshold, not between beds, between worlds. I'm Nathan. I'm a 42-year-old ER physician, 15 years in trauma. I've led more codes than I can count. I've cracked chests open with my hands, shocked hearts back into rhythm, stitched together the aftermath of every kind of human disaster. I've learned how to keep my mind steady while the world unravels, or at least I thought I had. There's something about Trauma Bay 4 I haven't been able to explain away. It started the night we lost a teenager, 15, maybe 16, victim of a stabbing. He was still conscious when they brought him in, holding pressure on his abdomen. His eyes were locked on the ceiling. We worked fast. There's a rhythm to resuscitation, tubes, pressure bags, wide bore lines. But his heart didn't wait. He coded mid-intubation. We shocked him 3 times, chest compressions, fluids. Then nothing. Flatline. We called it. I pulled the curtain around his body, stepped out to chart. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of monitors kicking back on. Beep, beep, beep. Not just any rhythm, a sinus rhythm, a strong one. I rushed back in, expecting to see a nurse at the bedside, maybe someone restarting the monitor for documentation. The bay was empty, completely. The monitor was on, green waveform steady, heart rate 88, blood pressure normal. But the kid was still under the sheet. No pulse, no breath, no one had touched him. I looked at the monitor, then at the sheet, and for a moment I hesitated to lift it. When I finally did, his eyes were open, but they weren't looking at me. They were staring through the curtain, toward the other side of the bay. The monitor flatlined again. I documented it as a glitch. We all did. But I couldn't forget the look in his eyes. It wasn't fear. It was recognition, like he'd seen something waiting just past the curtain. The next few weeks blurred together. Trauma Bay 4 stayed busy, but small things began to stack up. Every code that failed, every death ended the same way. Right after time of death, the curtain would flutter slightly. No breeze, no AC vent, just a gentle pull, like someone was stepping through, and the monitors, always powered back on for exactly 12 seconds. Beep, beep, then flatline. The night that nearly broke me came during a pile-up on the motorway. Multiple criticals, chaos. I was managing the whole trauma wing when a young woman coded in Bay 4. She'd been stable, open tib-fib fracture, minor internal bleeding, but her pressure dropped too fast. We rushed in, worked her hard. She came back, then coded again. I called it. 15 minutes later, I returned to pronounce officially. She was sitting upright, not breathing, not blinking, just sitting, eyes wide, hands resting calmly on her thighs, her gown perfectly arranged. The monitor showed nothing, no wires attached, just a blank screen, but I heard it, that same beeping, coming from the other side of the curtain. I stepped around, expecting to find someone playing a sick joke. There was no one, just the other half of the bay, empty. But I saw it, that sliver of shadow under the curtain's edge. It moved. I dropped to one knee and lifted the hem. Nothing, but the cold under there bit like winter. I backed away, re-entered the bay. The woman was lying down again, same position as before, eyes closed. I didn't report that. How do you write up something that undoes the rules you live by? I told myself it was exhaustion, that I'd seen a trick of the mind under fluorescent lights. But something deeper kept gnawing at me. Every time I walked into Trauma Bay 4, I felt like I was interrupting something. Not death, not grief, something watching. One night, I stayed late, everyone gone. I sat on the rolling stool in Bay 4, curtain drawn around me. I didn't move, didn't blink, just waited. And eventually, it came. The curtain on the opposite side pulled tight, not a flutter, not a sway, a pull, like someone sealing it from inside. The monitors turned on, no patient, no wires, just waveforms, steady, then the sound. It wasn't a beep this time, it was breath. Inhale, hold, exhale, slow, rhythmic. And then, from the other side of the curtain, I heard a voice whisper, "Crash code red." The phrase didn't make sense. It's not a real code. We have red for fire, blue for cardiac arrest, black for mass casualty. But crash code red, it chilled me more than if it had been a scream. It was too calm, too practiced, like it was waiting for someone to respond. I stood, moved to the edge, and before I could speak, the monitor shut off. The curtain opened slightly on its own, but there was no one there, just the empty bed. Later, I checked the logs. Trauma Bay 4 has had more flatlines, more failed codes than any other bay in the hospital. Almost double, and always the same monitor behavior. The staff talks about it in hushed tones now. They call it the red line. They say if you die on the left side of the curtain, your pulse returns for a moment on the right. I don't know what's waiting there, but I've started to suspect that some patients don't fully die in Bay 4. They cross into something else, a space between last breath and true silence, and whatever lies behind that curtain, it recognizes them. I don't code in Bay 4 anymore unless I have to. Something changed in me after that whisper. Crash code red. Now when I hear a real code called overhead, my body tenses like I'm waiting for a different kind of alarm, one that doesn't belong to us. I still work here, I still save people, but I avoid the curtain line because I think it remembers me now. The monitor flickered on yesterday when I passed by. No patient in the bed, just me in the room, and for 12 seconds it showed a heart rate, mine, and then another pulse beside it, steady, identical, but not mine. The two pulses beat together, then split, then faded. Maybe someday, when my own time comes, the curtain will part for me too, but until then, I won't cross it, not willingly. There's a clock above Trauma Bay 2, one of those analog wall models with a beige frame and thick plastic cover. It's not fancy, just a government-issued timekeeper that's probably older than half the residents working beneath it. The weird thing is, you wouldn't notice it unless you knew what to look for. I didn't, not for the first 3 years, but now I see it every shift, and I watch it, because sometimes it doesn't move forward, it ticks backwards. My name is Eliza. I'm a 34-year-old trauma nurse. I've worked nights ever since my divorce, and I prefer it that way. It's quieter, more honest. No small talk, no sunshine, just blood, breath, and silence. I'm not scared of much anymore. I've held hearts in my hands, stitched flesh that should have been unrecognizable. But that damn clock, it's the only thing that's ever made me question what I know is real. The first time I noticed, I was pushing Epi during a code. Elderly male, fall from second-story stairs, full arrest on arrival. His heart refused to restart. We worked him for 20 minutes before the attending called it. I turned away, exhausted, and looked up at the wall. That's when I saw the second hand tick to 12, then to 11, then to 10, backward, like time had decided to retrace its steps. I blinked, thought maybe I was lightheaded, but when I looked again, it was ticking normally, forward, steady. I didn't say anything, didn't want the med student beside me to think I was losing it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone wrong, not just with the patient, with the room itself. Over the next few weeks, I started checking that clock after every death. Sometimes it was fine, normal, but other times right after someone passed, the second hand would pause, then reverse. Always 3 ticks, never more. Back, back, back. It was subtle, almost lazy, like the clock was trying to hide what it was doing, like it didn't want to be caught. I told my coworker Tanya one night, half joking, half daring myself to say it aloud. She didn't laugh. She went pale. "That clock," she asked. "You've seen it too?" I nodded. She looked down at the floor. "My sister died in that bay," she said quietly. "I was shadowing the trauma team that night. I saw the clock do that. I thought it meant something was about to change." I asked what she meant. She just shook her head and walked away. Since then, I've watched more carefully, and it's not just the clock. The room gets quieter before it happens. More than quiet, still, like the air holds its breath. The fluorescent lights seem dimmer. The temperature drops a degree or two. I know it sounds like paranoia, but I've tested it. The wall thermometer near the crash cart dips every time the clock goes backwards, and when it does, someone dies. Even if the patient is stable, talking, breathing fine, if that clock ticks back 3 seconds, someone in that bay won't be breathing by morning. It happened with a boy last month, 12 years old, hit by a drunk driver while riding his bike, broken femur, some internal bruising, but nothing life-threatening. He was smiling when I brought him ice chips. I looked up, back, back, back. I froze. I told the attending we needed to check him again. He said I was overreacting. 5 hours later, he coded from an undetected arterial bleed. His vitals had masked it. We tried everything. Lost him anyway. That was the night I started keeping track. I now have a notebook tucked in my locker. Each time the clock reverses, I write the time, date, and patient in the bay. Every time the patient dies. I even reported it to facilities. Told them the clock was malfunctioning. They came and replaced the mechanism. A week later, it did it again. New hardware, same behavior. It's not the clock, it's the room, or something in it. I don't think the clock predicts death. I think it marks it, like time itself, trying to undo what just happened. As if just maybe for a brief moment, the world tries to change its mind and fails. That would explain the 3 seconds. One for each chance to take it back. Back, then nothing. I started noticing something else. When the clock reverses, I get this tightness in my chest, like anxiety, but colder. And then, I swear to you, I hear a breath, not mine, not the patient's, a breath from behind me. Every single time, the same intake, quiet, shallow, like someone just realized they were alive again, and then realized they weren't. A few nights ago, I sat in Bay 2 by myself, lights dimmed, just to see. No patient, just me and the clock. I waited. 3 a.m. Nothing. 3:05. Still. 3:10. The lights flickered, and the clock reversed. Back. I didn't move, didn't breathe, but I felt something just beside the gurney. A presence. Not heavy, not aggressive, just sad, desperate. It stood there for a few seconds, and then it was gone. The air warmed again, the lights steadied, and the second hand ticked forward, like time had given up trying. I think something lingers in that bay. I don't think it wants to hurt anyone, but I think it remembers. Maybe every person who dies in that room leaves a little of their last moment behind. A breath, a heartbeat, a look of regret. And the clock, it tries to pull them back, but it can't. No one comes back. They just echo. I've stopped trying to explain it. Some of the other nurses avoid Bay 2 now. They trade assignments, say the room gives them migraines or makes their hands shake. One new tech fainted while restocking the cabinet. No one talks about the clock, but they all glance at it when they think no one's watching, just in case. Tonight I'm working solo again. We've had 2 admits in Bay 1 and Bay 3. Bay 2 is empty. For now, but I can feel it, that stillness, that slow shift in the air. I look up, the second hand twitches, then settles. I wait, 1 tick, 2, 3, back, and I whisper into the silence, not tonight, but I know it won't matter. Somewhere, someone just slipped away, and for 3 seconds, the world tried to hold on. But time, like life, only moves in one direction, unless you're in Bay 2, where the clock sometimes remembers who we lost and how long they were almost still here.